This week on Swim Against the Tide we meet Will Hill, who is MD of Novel Wines, and we hear how he and his team are trying to change the perception of Eastern European wine. It's an amazing journey and discovery, and to find out that some regions have been making wine for over 8,000 years. It's a bit of a movement away from our usual business-focused subject onto the world of booze, which is never a bad thing. But it's also fascinating to understand how brands can win by bringing alive a passion within a team that can make a difference as to why a company will succeed. I hope you enjoy. Will, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much, Steve. It's great to be here with you.
So, Will is MD of Novel Wines, which we're going to find a lot about today. So it's going to be a combination of understanding his offer, and educating us all and getting us off our ignorant view of wines from maybe not the traditional places that we get there. So look, Will, we always start the podcast by you giving us a bit of background and insight as to how you end up as MD of Novel.
Yeah, happily. I mean, I quite like telling people about how I ended up here because my background isn't like strongly built into the wine industry. There's a lot of people in positions like me who have either moved from finance backgrounds or architecture backgrounds and moved into the wine industry, or there's people who are born into wine families. I'm not like that. I was from a very small town in North Wales. And I went to university studying advertising, and I had a part-time job working in a bar at the time. And when I was making cocktails, serving beers, pouring wine, I just fell in love with that side of things, learning about drinks and making people happy by providing these drinks for them. So I kind of very early on decided that I wanted to do something with my life down that road. But I wasn't quite ready to kind of take the big step forward into like my own company or going through the motions of sommelier schools or anything like that. So I did what everyone would do, and I just bought a one-way ticket to Australia and thought I'll find my way back somehow and have an adventure along the way. So kind of long story short on that one, it took me about 5 years to get back to the UK, travelling around, working.
You definitely went the long way, didn't you?
Yeah. A couple of years there, a couple of years in New Zealand, God knows how many countries in between. But yeah, I was working in restaurants, in bars, in cocktail bars, in hotels, some very nice places and some not so very nice places. But it was when I was in New Zealand, actually in Hawke's Bay in particular, I remember doing a wine tour, and you visit the wineries and you're amidst other wine lovers, and I'd kind of been exposed because of the work I was doing in hospitality, which I think everyone should do, by the way. I think it should be like national service. Everyone should have to do some form of hospitality or front of house retail just to kind of understand people a bit more. But when I was in Hawke's Bay, that was my penny drop moment. Because a lot of the time you speak to people in the wine industry and you'll ask them what was the wine that got you hooked on the industry, or what was the moment that reeled you in and made you kind of realise, this is it. And for me, it was in Hawke's Bay. The sun was going down. I was near a very, very small winery. It was actually, at the time, it was the second smallest winery in New Zealand, just because there was someone who had a licence to make and sell wine from the back of their truck. Otherwise, they would have been the smallest winery in New Zealand.
In a real Kiwi style, that, isn't it?
Exactly. And I just had that kind of, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to work with wines. I want to bring joy to people through this medium. And one of the best things about it for me and for what I enjoy as well is you do get to travel a lot and see vineyards and move around kind of thing. And so when I finally got back to the UK, I got about just over a decade worth of front of house hospitality experience behind me. So like I say, various different venues, but I thought I was at the time, but it turns out I'm not the kind of person who is a hospitality professional through and through, because the hours, you really have to give your lifestyle to that, and it just wasn't right for me. But I knew I wanted to work in the wine industry. So on the other side of the industry, I mean, there are so many roles I didn't even know about, and I was very fortunate to start work with a company in London called Albion Wine Shippers. They're quite small. They're an importer. They do a lot of focus on entry-level wines, bulk wines, which are bottled in the UK, and supply, pubs, bars, whoever across London. But what was fantastic, and even how the owner kind of sold it to me at the time, was that a lot of people used their company as a stepping stone. You come into the industry, you do a bit of everything because it's a small company, so you're selling, you're buying, you're doing the accounts, you're doing the invoicing, you're negotiating when the boss is negotiating, because sometimes there's only three of you there. You're doing the tasting, of course. So you literally do everything. And he says, you find what you're good at, find what you enjoy, and then off you go into the wine world, go and get yourself another job somewhere else. And I was with him for quite some time, 5 years, I think. And I kind of quickly decided that it was wine buying that I enjoyed. And I mean, that sounds so glamorous as well. And when I've said to people before, what do you do? Oh, I'm a wine buyer. You know, you get the same kind of reaction for everyone. That, oh, that's nice. You drink a lot of wine.
I've got some questions on this coming up just to understand what happens here.
Yeah. I'll bring you up to where I am at Novel, and then I want to hear those questions. So I decided I liked the buying aspect of it more than anything else there. So I focused a little bit more on that while I was there. And like I said, it was about 5 years or so in London at Albion Wine Shippers. And then, I decided to fly the nest from Albion, as people do. And I ended up as the group wine buyer for a company called Humble Grape, which is a fantastic concept. And they really do have some absolutely beautiful wine bars around London. I think now they have 6 of their own, and also Vivat Bacchus, the South African small group. And that was fun. That was really fun. So I'd educate their staff. I'd make fun wine quizzes for them as well, just to keep them all engaged. And then, of course, you've got the sorting out the wine lists and the nitty-gritty of actually making sure that these reputable and good and trendy wine bars have got the right kind of wines for the different kind of neighbourhoods they're in. And then all the boring stuff like the spreadsheets and the forecasts and the negotiations, all of those things that you don't really hear about at the wine buying side when you just tell your mates you're a wine buyer. But I liked that, and I was really proud of what I did there, because I was responsible for bringing in a couple of wineries, in particular one from Bulgaria and one from North Macedonia. The one from Bulgaria I was really proud of, because I'd known them for some time, and as soon as we got them in, their rosé, Bulgarian rosé, outsold all of their rosés. The Provence rosés, the Zinfandel, anything you can think of. That was their best-selling rosé for that first year it landed, and I haven't followed up, but as far as I know, they're still doing all right. So I was quite happy with that. I left there to join a similarly named company called Honest Grapes, but they're not really kind of my style in terms of what that company does as their crux. I joined them for another reason. So essentially, the company is mainly about fine wines, which everyone has a certain opinion of, or a kind of understanding of what it may or may not be. But for me, it's not really my style of wines. I think they're a little inaccessible to the general public and massively overpriced for what they are. There's a lot of prestige and a lot of history and tradition behind it, rather than necessarily what it is. But
the product itself,
but there are people who love that, go down it. There's a lot of money in that for the people who are buying it mainly. But they had a kind of subsidiary company which was supplying wines to the on-trade in and around London, but predominantly in the northwest of England, where they had set up. So I was brought on board to run that side of the company. And then I kind of left there because of this opportunity at Novel Wines. So I'd always, very early on in my kind of wine career, gravitated more towards wines that, the way I like to say it, is wines from lesser known regions and the grapes you might not have heard of. That's kind of how I sum up my brand, if you like, in the wine world. And I always wanted to introduce wines that people hadn't necessarily tried, or maybe turned their nose up at originally, to say, no, come on, give these a chance and let's do it. It's the satisfaction of surprising people with this Bulgarian rosé or these Charmat methods Macedonian Chardonnays. It's fantastic. So I've always liked that, and so I think naturally that made me gravitate towards Eastern Europe, because that is this kind of last bastion of rediscovery for the Western markets in the wine world, because everywhere makes wine, everywhere sells wine, but just what we have access to might be different. And Novel Wines history, we started long before I joined the company. About 5 years before I joined, Novel was actually founded by Ben Franks and a Hungarian guy as well, who've both kind of started the company together, based in Bath, as a means to make these unrepresented wines more accessible to the UK wine market. One from Hungary, one from the UK, so they kind of pooled their resources, started bringing in some Hungarian wines, and then slowly expanded to some of the neighbouring countries as well. And it was a retail shop in Bath, which was quite popular, a little kind of destination place for tastings and things like that in Bath, and then they had their online retail and the private sales and tastings, and they actually did a lot of stag do's. It was surprising me to hear they kind of grew the business quickly on the back of stag do's in Bath.
Very at market stag do's.
Yeah, it must have been. I mean, I've got my stag do coming up this year, and no, it's not going to be a wine tasting. So they did that for a while, and both of them had a kind of other passion in the wine world that they wanted to do. Novel for them was a means to an end. So Georgi, the Hungarian founder, is now running his own Hungarian-based wine import company, and Ben is now heading up the canned wine company, which is a fantastic endeavour and has got very successful very quickly. And doing something which, again, I love to champion, which is seeing wines in alternative formats, which is a huge sustainability tick. So nobody should be turning their nose up at the wines just because it doesn't come in a 750ml bottle. No. It's no longer a mark of quality or lesser quality.
And is that served then as a measure?
Yeah. So they have the kind of single serve ready to drink cans. I think they're 250ml cans. But you'll see them now at the cricket or at the tennis, and people buy them for picnics, or they're in every supermarket, and they do kegged wine, which is fantastic. But their crux was always wines from Central and Eastern Europe. And I met Ben when I was on a trip in Georgia, in the Caucasus, not the US, Georgia, which you annoyingly still have to make the distinction of with some people, even when you're talking about wines. But we were in Georgia together on a buyer's trip, actually, and we just got chatting. And we'd done a little bit of business via email in the past. I'd bought some things from him for retail, and he bought some Mexican wines, actually, from me for his retail business. So we met for the first time, and we just got chatting, and all of a sudden he just said, "You know what, you should work for Novel Wines." And I was like, "No, okay, let's talk about that." A couple of months later, he phoned me up, and he's like, "I'm serious, if you want a job, I can, and then he explained to me about him leaving for canned wine, etc., and he needs someone to come and take over, and I suppose the rest is history then. And that was it was the end of 2023 when I kind of joined with a big task, because Novel Wines, as I mentioned before, had grown with them as their kind of means to an end, and it was always this kind of hobby that turned into a business that kind of grew to its stature. So in order to grow more, it needed to be a little bit more ambitious and make quite a significant change. So our plan was to move away from retail and try to position Novel Wines as just an importer and distributor to the on-trade. So last year, 2024, was challenging because this is where we did all of our transition from, business model A to business model B. So there's a lot of moving pieces internally, a lot of moving pieces in terms of consolidating our wine list from a very, none of the previous buyers would mind me saying this, quite a bloated and not the most commercially astute put together wine list for the on-trade, because it was all for their retail enterprise.
Right.
So it was changing all of that. So there were some tough decisions that had to be made with regard to wineries that we were working with. Obviously, it's their livelihood, it's their wines that we're selling, and there was quite a few of them that we just couldn't work with anymore because we couldn't commit to the volumes, we couldn't give them the efforts that they deserved in order to sell their wines, because we had to make these strategic decisions of who to keep, who to work with, who we can champion, and who realistically is going to represent our brand and we can do justice with. So that was tough, and I think it probably took a little longer than expected, because we did have some internal changes that we weren't expecting earlier than they were supposed to happen. So I think kind of 2025 now is our launching year, really. We've been slowly building up our portfolio of clients. We're now supplying into Michelin star restaurants, other groups, pub chains, more commercially led places too, and it's putting us in a good spot now that we're primed for our projected growth into what I'm hoping is going to be recognised as UK's #1 importer of wines from Central and Eastern Europe. And when people hear the name Novel Wines, they're going to think Central Eastern Europe, and when people in the wine trade think Christ, I need to learn something here about Romania, about Serbia, about Ukraine. They will know to come to Novel Wines, and we are the guys who can help them out.
Brilliant. Right, there's loads of questions. So let's focus on the wine for a minute, because
Sure.
I think it's interesting, because obviously the name Novel is a good one. So I've been on your website and researched well, and
scared
like you
now.
say, the list is interesting, isn't it? To, let's call me an ignorant wine buyer, that I think, well, no, that's good. It's from Spain, it's from France, it's from Italy. Obviously, do a bit of Aussie and New Zealand and American, but like, you look down that list, and I'll read it out. So you've got Austria, Hungary, Croatia, Georgia, Armenia, Greece, Cyprus, North Macedonia, Lebanon, Turkey, Moldova, Romania, Bulgaria, Slovenia, Switzerland, Germany, and Ukraine. I mean,
we can add Thailand and India and Mexico and Brazil to that in terms of our offer in retail, yeah.
There we go.
But that's the whole concept, and that's why we are Novel, hence the name.
Yeah.
The original kind of tagline with them was never the classics. So if someone comes and they only drink champagne, great, I'm sure you love champagne, but have you tried this premium Slovenian sparkling wine, which also wins awards wherever it goes and is more competitively priced and just as interesting. And then, if people, are always going to want to drink things like Prosecco, don't worry, I've got a Charmat sparkling wine from Brazil. Brazil has quickly positioned itself in the recent years as the premier sparkling wine producing nation in the Southern Hemisphere, really. They've got a new PDO a few years ago, which is the only one in what's called the New World, exclusively for sparkling wines. So if
what's a PDO to ignoramus here?
So you know how the simplest way to call it is if champagne can only be from Champagne if it's called champagne. So everywhere in the wine world has kind of an equivalent. If you're in Italy, you'll have a DOCG system. If you're in South Africa, you've got their wine of origin system, and PDO is kind of the protected name of origin of where it is. So repeat there. So every country has many with different names, and in Brazil they have the only one in what's the New World, essentially outside of Central and Western Europe, which is exclusively for sparkling wines. And it's a testament to the quality that comes from there. And it's little things like that we hope to educate the general public with, so that it kind of demystifies, oh, Brazil, I thought it was just beaches and caipirinhas. Like, no, there's wines there too, and they're brilliant. And that's the kind of thing we do with Eastern Europe historically, and Eastern Europe kind of thing. So whenever people want alternatives, which we're finding a lot nowadays on the on-trade as well, the market is, we like to say, it's coming to meet us in the middle now. Because people do want alternatives. Champagne's expensive. Bordeaux is expensive. Burgundy is expensive. Rioja's, is expensive at the premium side of things. So you get people who putting wine lists together, and they feel like they have to have a Bordeaux, but it has to be kind of a Bordeaux blend, but still, affordable. So why not one that we have from Ukraine? What we like to say, if it's a good wine, does it matter where it's from?
I think that's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously you and I have had a chat before this, and a lot of the countries I've just listed on purpose, but part of it is education, isn't it? It's what we're saying.
Absolutely.
Is you were telling me a lot of those countries have produced wine for as long as all of what we would class as the classic regions, haven't they? A lot of them.
Longer.
If not longer.
By some stretch. I mean, Bulgaria has a history of producing wine almost 4,000 years. And if we're talking the record, then it's Georgia. It's 8,000 years of winemaking history, evidentially proven, not just kind of based on stories and tales.
There's a picture on a wall, that'll do.
No, exactly. Someone said, I promise it was ages ago. No, there's I've actually been to the region in the south central part of Georgia, and that's where the origins of kind of commercially produced wines are from. And it's a
and so why do you think it's taken to 2025 when we're talking about it for people? I've said to you that I do like my Romanian wine. I've had quite a bit. They do a good Pinot Noir, which is my go-to sort of grape and bottle. But why do you think it's only now that people? Is it just education, or is it as a climate change?
There's a lot of reasons. I mean, the quality of wine has been there for a long, long time. I think the most important to me, or significant, I probably should say, reason in the last 100 or so years, is the political situation within those countries and neighbouring countries. There's been a lot of communist rule which regulates the type of wine that's being produced in Eastern Europe and where it can be sold, and every kind of limitation put on it, essentially. And that only ended, for the most part, in
so they kept all the good for the good stuff for the Politburo, did they?
Yeah, and they just basically, it was quantity over quality. So there were wine factories, even in Georgia now. What we would call a traditional winery, they would refer to as a wine factory, because their word for a winery or a winery or cellar is a marani, which is where they keep their kind of clay vessels called a kvevrý, which is their traditional way. So whenever they talk about traditional winemaking, it's not what we call traditional winemaking, because our traditional winemaking's only really gone back 200, 300 years or so. In Georgia, it's 8,000 years, so it's different. But the political situation with a lot of these countries, I mean, Georgia specifically, let's just talk about Georgia for a moment. Their main export is Russia and the USSR. Has been for a long time. But then in 2007, 2008, when there was that invasion into South Ossetia and the kind of settling of some Russians into the northwest part of Georgia, they put an embargo on them, and they couldn't sell their wines to Russia anymore. So they had to find different exports.
They had to find the market.
Yeah, and then it happened again in 2012, and it happened again with other conflicts they've had with their neighbours. There's political instability, and these kind of geopolitical sanctions that get put on people have long-lasting effects. So their main exports these days are Poland and the Nordic countries, but the last year or two, UK has become their fastest growing export market, which is amazing, absolutely amazing.
And it's amazing, isn't it? So how are you? How do you know where to go? Is there good insight knowledge in the industry that's just not being shared wider? Is it, because you've got a long list of wines on your website and
well. That's interesting, and I think this comes from experience. So in the wine world, people generally specialise on something. And as you progress through your wine education, you might go down your WSET courses, pass the diploma, which is a really strong achievement to do. But then once you get beyond that, there's two sort of equivalent programs, one called a Master Sommelier, an MS, and one called a Master of Wine, an MW. And once you pass those, which are some of the hardest exams in the world, by the way, there's like 500 Master of Wines in the world since the 70s, and it's got like a obscenely low pass rate of the exam. It's chronically hard, but anyone who even attempts it is really positioning themselves at the top of their craft. And usually these Masters of Wine and aspiring Masters of Wine specialise in a certain area, certain region, and there's not that many who are focusing on Eastern Europe. So when I was kind of wanting to learn more and wanting to kind of position myself as an expert, I suppose, on this part of the world, I was looking at the MWs who did focus on that part of the world. There's Lisa Granick, Sarah Abbott, Caroline Gilby are probably the three most significant ones, and I'm sure the people whose names I haven't mentioned are going to hunt me down. But I remember reaching out to Caroline Gilby back when she first released a book she wrote called The Wines of Bulgaria, Romania and Moldova, which is a very concise book on the history and current status of those countries. And I reached out to her, and I was a little bit of a fanboy kind of thing, because she was like the wine person of Eastern Europe. And I said, hello, can I learn more about these wines, please? How do I do it? Because none of the wine education schools tell me anything about it. They're all Western European focused. And she was so kind, and she replied back to me saying, do you know what? There isn't any formal education studies based on Central and Eastern Europe. You just have to go. You just have to taste the wines yourself. You've got to go there. You've got to go to.
And we know you like a bit of travel, Will.
Exactly. And thankfully, one of the benefits of things like Ryanair and other such airways, you can get there pretty effectively nowadays. So, I mean, essentially, that's what I did. I just started to have little trips, kind of solo trips. Because luckily, being in London, it's quite accessible to get to one of many airports and shoot out every now and again. Mm-hmm. So I just did that. And again, in London, one of the reasons I moved to London was because in the wine world, you have access to everything. Any wine show that comes to London, everyone from all over the world will come and attend. And I mean, I was at London Wine Fair this week, and I was tasting wines from Estonia, from Finland, And it's crazy. So all of these wine fairs in London pop up, and you have access to all of these wines, and you can go to these amazing wine fairs in Serbia, in Greece, in all over, and you talk to the people who make the wines, you talk to the people who sell the wines in other countries, you talk to people who are hosting the seminars, the masterclasses in these countries, and they help you to understand how to get that message out there and how to build a foundation for a company to be the go-to people for these things, especially from our point of view where we see that as a gap in the market. There are so many wine importers in the UK. There really are, small ones and big ones, and it's tough for everyone. It's really tough. But we're all on the same team. We all want to be selling wine and supporting each other and succeeding together. But what we find is a lot of the larger importers, they focus, they're very commercially minded, as they need to be in order to grow. So they'll have Prosecco, Rioja, US wines, Australian bulk wines, these Chilean wines, Mendoza Malbecs. But then they might have an Armenian winery on the side. They might have a Bulgarian winery on the side as well. And it almost feels like it's a box-ticking exercise to say, yeah, we are aware of the rest of the wine world, but there's not that many people there who you can go to and say, oh, can you teach me about these guys? What is it actually like in Armenia? Can you tell me about Areni Noir and how that works with Caucasian oak over Hungarian oak over Slavonian oak? And then you've got the very smaller specialist importers. There's a fantastic Serbian wine importer in the UK at the moment as well. Really, really good, only with Serbian wines and one or two extras. But what we want to do is draw that line down the middle of Europe and focusing on Eastern Europe, as that is what we do. We do all of that. So you can go and get your Riojas, Vino Verdes from whoever, but we are the specialists of this area because we've been there, we've spoke to the people, we understand the terroir, and it's not just for southwest Bulgaria, it's not just for Romania, it's for the whole region. And that's kind of how we want to put our kind of stamp on the industry.
I think that was it, yeah. So I was thinking the podcast was called Swim Against the Tide, and we want brands that are going against the norm. And you could argue no one needs new wines, there's quite a lot out there.
There is a lot.
And the ones that are there are backed by countries sometimes, aren't they? The French wine trade and all of that. And so it's a very difficult market. You then look and flip to the majority of people. I won't include you in this, Will. Majority of us, we sort of find the wine we like and so we stick to it, or we don't, or we might just go one across when someone, like you say, in a restaurant goes, haven't got that, but try this. Mm-hmm. So how do you swim against the tide to explain to someone that you should try this wine from Georgia or Greece or Armenia and things like that, and as to why, and how do you get them to sample that? Because I assume the last thing you want is it to be on price alone, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a bit of a race to the bottom.
Historically, wines from this part of the world, particularly Bulgaria, actually, it has been a race to the bottom, and it has been the price that's got them in there. The UK was Bulgaria's largest export market in the late 80s. And the UK brought in more Bulgarian wine than from anywhere else in the world except France, Spain, Italy during that time. It was insane numbers, really. They still haven't got back to those levels yet to this day. But basically, this is what I kind of allude to when I mentioned earlier in the show that the market's coming to meet us in the middle. We've been telling people about these alternatives, and we've been putting these in front of people, and it's difficult because a lot of people who are responsible for buying wines and putting them on these lists, the people that we are selling to, they have opinions that were set 30 years ago. Yeah, so they still think of Bulgarian wines as being this, £2 bottom of the supermarket shelf Merlot or something, or crazy alcoholic cabs and oaked Chardonnays that you just, you don't want to know who the winemaker is, you want to know who the barrel maker is to compliment. And it's difficult to shift that mindset. But two main things for us really is, and it may sound like a sweeping generalization, but the wine industry, I think in recent years has become far more inclusive and open than it has been historically. So we're seeing far more younger people in these positions. We're seeing far more people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different genders, all in these positions of responsibility, which is absolutely fantastic. And the industry needs more things like this. The world needs more things like this. But this breeds an open mind, and this helps people to understand that you can't just pigeonhole wine into, oh, it's from France, so it must be the best.
Yeah.
Oh, they've always done it like this in Barolo, so everyone must make their Nebbiolos like this. This is how it's done. And people are opening their eyes a little more to the greater wine world. Like it's not just us. There'll be specialists who focus on North American wines, but they're showing wines from Virginia or Texas. A good friend of mine imports wines from Texas and from Taiwan, and they sell fantastically. And it's not just us, as I say. It's not just us. There are other people swimming against this tide, and we've been doing this comparative thing for some time as well, where, like I say, people get priced out of certain things. So if you want champagne, well, what is it you want about champagne? Do you want the name champagne? Or do you want a traditional method sparkling wine made on those sort of soils in that sort of climate from those grapes? Because that happens in lots of countries.
Yeah, I'm about to say, yeah.
Yeah.
And as the climate changes, suddenly areas open up, don't they, now as well, I'm assuming.
This is interesting as well, because the amount of indigenous varietals in especially the Balkan countries, and every nation, almost every nation, because I know Brazil doesn't have any, but has their own indigenous grapes, which historically grow there for hundreds of years and have not been bred specifically.
Not
they
cultured,
are from that country.
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But we don't know about them here. So, some of them are good, some of them are not so good. Some of them are very commercially astute and very marketable, some are not. So it's about getting the message of that out there, the history, the culture, the story, the connection to the land and where it's from. And people listen. A lot of wine selling is storytelling. And once you get people engaged with it, with what it is and where it's from and what it means to the people who are producing it historically and culturally and in the modern world, they'll give it a try. And like I say before, if it's a good wine, does it matter where it's from?
No. Yeah. So do you maybe have to do the Pepsi challenge, don't you, with some blind tasting and say,
it happens. It happens a lot. There's famously there was the Judgment of Paris in the 70s that they for those who don't know, it was organised by famous wine journalists and personalities as a comparative tasting of the best of Bordeaux, essentially, in Burgundy, with some of the best wines from the US. And it caused such an uproar because most of the US wines won. And at the time, this was how could this happen to these beautiful French wines? How does the wine world was turned upon its head, and off the back of that, mimics and other kind of similar sort of things pop up. There's always the Judgment of something, or at the London Wine Fair again. I reference it again because it is the last day today, actually, and I was there yesterday. They did a sparkling one where they literally did have a number of champagnes going blind against champagne equivalents from around the world. They haven't published the results yet, so keep an eye out for that in the next couple of days.
And did you get to try them?
No, I wasn't judging that. I wasn't judging that one. Maybe
talk about you do. Obviously, I've had a look, and there's a couple of things that you do judge for. So tell me about that. How does that fit in with the day job?
So this is another part of the job that when you tell your friends what you're doing, oh, I'm just off to Greece to do some wine judging. I've got 70 wines a day for the next week. There's no way you can say that to people without them saying, So
we know. We don't have to say it.
Exactly. So, but it's not. It's look. I'll say straight up. It's one of the more fun and exciting and engaging aspects of working in the wine trade. But it's by no means an easy thing. And anyone who thinks it is an easy thing should not be wine judging, because you have to take it seriously. It's wineries pay money to enter.
Your decisions could affect someone's livelihood, couldn't
Absolutely.
they?
Depending on the competition, depending on the colour of that sticker that goes on the top, how many points it's got, that can be the difference between selling wine in a fine dining restaurant or in a pub. Yeah. Or it can be the difference between selling it on a retail shelf or not. So you have to stand out. And the winemakers put so much effort. It's their life. It's not just their livelihood, it's their life. To make these wines, to pay the money, to get them there, to promote them, to put them in there, to have them tasted. And they should be tasted respectfully by people who care and people who know what they're doing and people who can be objective about these things. So there's many organisations who judge. You've probably been to, you see in the supermarkets or shops the stickers on the bottle of wines, essentially. So they come from one of dozens of organisations and companies. There's probably 5 I think I have judged with, but predominantly I judge with the IWSC, which is the International Wines and Spirits Competition, and Decanter. Yeah. In my opinion, they're probably the 2 biggest names.
You see
Decanter
a lot, don't you?
Yeah, Decanter is historically the biggest. It attracts a lot of top wine professionals to be judges. They have their publications, they have their online side of things as well, their events they host. They are, yeah, I would say they are the most famous kind of body like this in the wine world. IWSC to me is comparable, but I think the name still needs to kind of maybe gain the prestige of Decanter.
Yeah.
And they both have their charm, and I really appreciate the way they judge. And there's other competitions who vary slightly in how you approach the wine, but the general kind of overview is you'll be in a panel, so maybe let's say me, you, and a wine buyer from XYZ hotel restaurant group is over there, and there's 3 of us on the table, sometimes it's 4, and we will have a flight, like a set of 10 different wines in front of us, and throughout the day we'll have maybe 6 or 7 of these flights of wines, anywhere between 6 wines or 12 wines kind of thing. So tend to do somewhere between 60 and usually no more than 80 wines a day, which is a lot. And yes, we are spitting, by the way. Otherwise,
you knew that was my next
very
question.
messy
Yeah.
lunch, shouldn't it? No.
But by the end, yeah, it's fine. It's wine.
It's fine, good. 10 points, yeah. So no, you are spitting, you are assessing. And you have to have a proper discussion about it. So, if you taste something and you make your notes, you'll give it a score. There's a 100-point scoring system in wines, which is, depending on who you talk to, up for debate whether it's meaningful, meaningless, or whatever, because you're never going to see a wine which is 2 points on a 100-point scale. Essentially, if it's under 85, it means it's not going to get a medal. Changes with different companies, but that's
just with nothing on the bottle, right?
It just wouldn't get it. It wouldn't say sorry, it's rubbish. But I'm one of the senior judges for IWSC, so it's important to write tasting notes and overviews of the flights and things you might notice. But what is really important is if a wine doesn't get a medal, you have to write a good explanation as to why not, something constructive for the winemaker as well, which I think is a really good touch. Because if they're
and what do those things tend to be?
If the wine, there's kind of 2 elements. Either the wine is going to be faulty. Sometimes there's a problem. It could be corked, or it could have another fault, and that's not their fault. But you just have to go and say, look, I'm sorry, we couldn't assess the wine. It had a cork taint, so we're sorry. But sometimes wines are out of balance, and when you're looking at a wine like kind of structurally, you have to look at how the level of alcohol feels on the wine, how the acidity comes across. Too little acidity leaves the wine feeling gloopy and flabby. Too much, and it's like licking a battery. And then you've got the question of tannins on red and amber wines as well. Tannins are often difficult to explain to people who don't taste a lot of wine for kind of a living. But imagine you've steeped a tea bag in the water for far too long, and you have a sip, and it's that astringency, that kind of bitterness it has. That's their
dryness,
tannins.
Isn't it?
So they're tannins. And that can come from oak. And if a winemaker's used far too much oak and you can't taste the fruit in the wine anymore, that's, it might be a style of the wine, but is it too much? And this is why there's a panel of judges, because you score the wines by yourself, you make your notes, and then you have a discussion. You might have missed something.
And then you come to an agreement then. So if you've given it 82 and he's given it 87 and...
it breeds this discussion. So usually there's a kind of a calibration. You kind of understand the level of a wine. So they'll give you, like, for argument's sake, they won't tell you this. You'll find out afterwards. Here's a wine, taste it. Oh, this one scored 90 points last year. So this is kind of what it was, kind of thing. So going down the flight, then we'll score our wines. I'll give it a 90, which is like just a silver medal. You'll give it an 89 because you liked it, but you didn't think it was quite a silver medal, and someone on the other table, on our panel, maybe also gave it an 89. So we'd have that conversation then. Is it a silver medal? Is it not a silver medal? Because it's on that cusp. So if it's close like that, it's quite an interesting conversation to have, especially if you're on a medal line, because I might really like it. I might be passionate about this, and I might say, no, come on, have a retaste. Maybe you've missed something. Maybe you were rushing. Maybe the wine before it was too strong, and you marred your judgment of this. But that's why you have these discussions and these conversations, is to go back over and be sure and be certain. It's more difficult when there is a disparity, because it does happen sometimes. I could love this wine and say, do you know what, I want to give this a gold. And you can say, cool, lot of oak on there for me, mate. Not my style at all. I can't get past that. It's a low scorer. So we'd have to have that conversation, discuss things commercially, discuss things about the style, because you're not usually with most competitions, you're not judging completely blind. you'll know these are, for example, Bordeaux blends from China. For example, you'll know it is that category. So you'll say, well, it doesn't taste like, I can't taste any of the Merlot, I can't taste any Cab. If anything, it tastes like Pinot Noir, it's far too thin. So it's a question of typicity. But then if all you're tasting is this kind of oak barrel, these tannins, which can be quite aggressive and harsh, then again, it's out of balance. It's too much oak, it's not enough intensity. And all of these things you have to have that discussion about and come to an understanding. And thankfully as well, every kind of panel, I suppose, has a panel chair, usually a master of wine or a master sommelier or a very seasoned judge at one of these organisations, who you can kind of call on to settle disputes, kind of thing. And it's all done amicably. Sometimes they even call someone else in and say, look, you're judging these Georgian amber wines. Let me go and get my mate over there who I know, lives in Georgia, writes about orange wines. I'll bring him over and he'd get his opinion as well, kind of thing. So there's so many experts in the room that you can always kind of, for instance like that, you can always kind of rely on expertise and fairness in these things. But like I say, it's you have to put the effort in. It's not just drink the wine, like it, and yeah.
And do you have the ability, whilst you're there judging, to obviously discover wines as well for novel?
Yeah, absolutely. It comes a little later because at the time you don't know what the wines are.
Okay.
You don't know the producer, because that wouldn't be fair at all.
True.
You could have a vested interest one way or another.
So you're not judging it on the label like I do?
No, there's one company who does that I know of. There's the London Wine Competition. They do an element of their judging where they look at the label and give it a score based on on the aesthetics of it.
But I'd love to know how much that influences people. I bet it's huge, isn't it?
Yeah,
because you do, don't you? A bit.
It's been a little while since I've judged them, so I can't quite remember exactly how that one goes, but I don't know, because you usually you kind of submit the scores, and actually for IWSC they released their results on Monday, so like I know which area I was judging. Like I'm because of my area of expertise, I'm always judging either Eastern European wines of some description, Asian wines or Brazilian wines. That's pretty much it, because there's a million experts of Spanish wines and Argentinian wine and US wine. They're fine for that. So
leave them to it.
I don't want to get involved. And in all honesty, if I was a Rioja producer, I would want a Spanish wine expert to judge my wine and not me, because as you know, you can, as a professional in the industry and as someone who judges a lot of wines, I can, but I would be more comfortable if it was a Spanish wine expert judging the Spanish wines, and they do try to make this distinction.
And is it? Sorry, Will. I'm loving this. Is a gold medal winning red wine that you would do from, like you say, from Eastern Europe, on a par with a red wine winning one from like the classics, either Spain or Italy or France?
Yeah, I would say so. I think this is why I think it's important the tastings like this, the judgings are not completely blind. It's important to know I'm judging, Bulgarian indigenous reds from Struma Valley. So if I'm given a Melnik, it has to be a gold medal example of that.
Right, okay.
Because I'm not
best
tasting
in class, so to speak, yeah.
I'm not tasting. There's, you have to think globally and commercially as well. Like it's got to be a gold medal worthy wine. There's this kind of a written distinction, like a truly outstanding example of what it's trying to be, a wine that brings joy, a wine that you would kind of bring to your friends and family kind of thing. You know what I mean? Come on, you have to try this wine. And you're always encouraged to find the joy and find the pleasure and find the good in these wines so that you can get passionate about it and sell it to everyone else. Say, look, no, you're missing, this is really good, come and give it another go. So it's not directly comparable. You're not gonna be sat there judging you never would, but an extreme example, a 1990 Le Pin or Pomerol or something, and give that a gold medal for what it is, and then you're not going to judge this kind of 2020 Struma Valley Malnic and give it a gold medal, maybe even 1 point higher. But it doesn't mean it's a better wine. It means in the competition it got a gold because it was a gold medal worthy wine in its category and in the competition. Yeah. Because you might absolutely hate Old Bordeaux and absolutely love these light, fresh Pinot Noirs from Australia, for example, or Romania, as you do.
Romania, come on, Romania, let's fly.
Let's stick with Romania, let's fly it. So it doesn't mean the one you don't like is bad. Yeah. It just means you don't like it. And there's a million ones out there you would like or can try and find something else. And I think that's an important I nearly said distinguishization then. That's definitely not a word, is it?
You'd have got, if you'd given it with a bit of front, you'd have got away with
Probably
it.
could have got away with that.
Yeah,
Distinction, I think, is probably more accurate. Let's go with distinction. To make
very good.
is... I want to go back now and say distinguishization.
Yeah. Just
to
put
make,
it in later on.
I will. I'll just write it in the dictionary with pen and pretend it was always there.
Yeah.
And no, so what I was... the important distinction to make is that... the wine that you like isn't necessarily the wine everyone else likes. And the wine you don't like isn't the one everyone else doesn't like. So when you're judging, you have to bear that in mind, which is why I think it's important to have that little category of it is a Pinot Noir from Burgundy, for example, because you know what it's trying to be. Whether you like it or not, there's a commercial element to it and something it's trying to be like, and elements that are correct or not correct or in balance or not in balance, and yeah, you have to have those discussions.
Right, brilliant. Right, while we're on this then, in terms of educating us all out there of what novel has to sell, give us a red, a white and a rosé that we've all got to try, that you would say that'll give you a good flavour of the offer.
Do you know what? I'm gonna. It is, but I'm gonna try and go a little bit more novel wines with you, and I'm gonna give you a red, a white, and an orange if I can. So, for a red, one of two here. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to
write them down now, and I've got a chance to buy them before they get too popular when the podcast goes out. Yeah.
Do you know what? I was going to recommend a Saperavi from Georgia from a producer called Chelty, because I think Saperavi is a grape that everyone should be trying and drinking. Commercially, to people, I always recommend it as a halfway house between that Mendoza Malbec and the Montepulciano, because it's got these kind of vibrant,
you sort of
juicy...
got to do that bit of referencing, haven't you, each time? Not in a bad way, just to go, I like stuff in that world.
Yeah, I think depending on who you're getting the message to, it's helpful. Sometimes it's not helpful because these indigenous grapes are very much their own identity. And they are, Saperavi is Saperavi. It's not Malbec, it's not Montepulciano, it's not even closely related to those grapes. However, there's enough usually found in their flavor profile that you can, familiar friends of these kind of juicy, plummy flavors, but also this nice spice. Having said that, I'm not going to recommend that one. I'm going to recommend to you...
Just write it down.
I know, so we'll keep it there. You can have it as well. I'm going to recommend to you a wine from one of my absolute favourite regions, which is the Struma Valley in southwest Bulgaria. So a winery is called Aya Estate, A-Y-A, Aya Estate. And these guys are fantastic. They're quite new. And they've got a grand opening of their winery at the end of this year, actually. They have been using it to make the wines, but they've finally done it all up for visitors and guests. So that's opening this year. And they champion local grapes. And the local grape they have in that region is called Melnik, M-E-L-N-I-K. And Melnik is a fantastic grape with a huge family of grapes all around it, each one very interesting and exciting. But this one called Melnik, broadleaf Melnik or Shiroka Melniczka Loza, but Melnik to its friends. Stick with Melnik. Yeah, this is another thing you have to be quite commercially astute with some of the foreign indigenous grapes that come to the UK market. We don't like. We get scared when there's a lot of letters we're not familiar with, and there are too many consonants together. It can put us off. You don't even want to try to pronounce them. But thankfully, Melnik, 2 syllables, nice and easy. It used to be a favourite of Winston Churchill back in the day as well. But this grape's quite full-bodied, quite robust, quite full-bodied. So if you like Nebbiolos and Barolos, it's kind of that ilk. Maybe a little bit Shiraz in its style as well, kind of Northern Rhone, meaty, peppery Shiraz. Mm-hmm. For a white, we're going to jump to Croatia, northern Croatia, in a region called Istria, which is fantastic. It's like a little country within a country. We
went on holiday to Rovinj not long ago.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful place. Absolutely beautiful.
Goodness me, yeah.
And we're seeing a bit of an uptake in Croatian wines because of this accessibility. I think a lot more people are going to Croatia and coming back saying, where can I get Croatian wines from? And then, hey, over here. So there's this lovely family winery from this town called Momjan, and the winery is called Kabola with a K, K-A-B-O-L-A. Very Tuscan when you're there. They've got the cypress trees, this kind of modern winery on the side, and they champion another local white grape called Malvasia Istarska from Istria. Malvasia there's a lot of grapes called Malvasia around the Malmsies. This one is not related to those. So this is kind of Istria's flagship white grape. It has similarities to some Malvazias you might be more familiar with, but it's not quite as opulently aromatic. It still has this lovely little orange blossom citrus twist to it, and can be a little more richer and unctuous. And they struggle sometimes to keep the alcohol lower with this one, but when they do, and Cabola do, it keeps it in balance and fresh and really refreshing. It's got this lovely little salinity on the finish, makes it great with seafood.
I'm there.
You're there. Good.
And go on then, we're going orange to finish.
So now we're going to jump, and we're going to jump all the way back to Georgia here, where they call them amber wines, because their word for the colour of them translates literally to amber. And historically, this is how they just made wines. Their white wines were always amber wines. So Chelty Winery, the ones I mentioned before, another family-owned winery in a town called Schilder, right in the foothills of the Caucasus Mountains. It's absolutely stunning to see these mountains rising out the ground. And they're right in the foothills in Kakheti, which is the eastern, main, most significant wine-producing region of Georgia. They are Saperavi specialists in their area, is just primed for it, but there is a white grape, and going back to names and pronunciations, this grape is not only one of my favourite white grapes to enjoy, but the name is great to say as well. So it's called Kisi, 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 and they age their wines in this large clay amphora called a kavevri, which is a little harder to say. So Chelty Winery's Kisi Kavevri is an absolutely stunning example of an orange or amber wine.
So if we're going to dip our toe into an orange wine, that's the one to go, is it?
I think if you've never had an orange wine before, it might be a bit of a sensory overload, but it is still approachable. There's many more kind of orange amber wines that I would say are like my first orange wine. This one is like.
And so how do you serve orange? Is it chilled or is it at room temperature or?
I always go for closer to room temperature. If you chill it too much, the tannins can sometimes get a bit too much, and so much of the flavour comes from the skins because it's aged on skins. Just to dispel a quick myth for people who don't know, orange wines is not made with oranges. It is
worth saying.
Worth saying because it's not a silly question.
I know you're thinking of me when you're thinking of your audience now. Yeah.
There are no silly questions in wines, right? And I always say I'm taking that as a challenge. Find the silly question. There aren't any. When you make red wines, you pick the grape. Simplest form, by the way, there are a lot more steps involved, but simplest form is you pick the grapes, you press them, you crush them, and you let it sit on the skins for a little bit, which is taking the colour from the skins into the grapes, which is why the red skins give red wine. If you do that with white grapes, the skin gives the colour which goes orange, amber, golden, that kind of colour. So essentially what you're doing is making a red wine but with white grapes.
Okay.
Essentially. So but those skins have got so many more flavour compounds inside, so many more polyphenols, which you wouldn't find in a white wine because they don't use the skins. So aside from this beautiful colour, you're going to find these apricot, jasmine, saffron, bergamot, chamomile flavours, green tea. There really is a whole plethora of flavours that you probably wouldn't find, or you won't find in white wines. So if you stick your nose over a glass of Kisi Kavevri, particularly Chelty's one, you'll open your senses to a new way to enjoy wines.
Brilliant. Right. Well, look, when the podcast is edited, we'll put those on the link to allow people to get hold of those.
Fantastic.
But it's only 3:00 in the afternoon. I'm ready I'm always ready for a drink of wine.
I mean, when you're talking about wine, all you want to do is enjoy it as well, you know.
I know, especially when the sun's shining at the moment. So. Look, Will, I've loved that. Normally we go a bit deeper into the commercial side, but I think it's really nice to have a change and, more booze than business. But I suppose it proves if you have a passion for whatever you do, you discovered that wine was your thing, and you discovered after 7-8 years of wandering around the world to try and find it.
Yeah.
But I think it's a bit of an advert for everybody to say is, nowadays, especially if you're just leaving school, if you're 18, 19, you're working a lot longer than we are, unfortunately. I hate to tell you that now. So make sure you land into something that you really love. And hearing your passion, and when you watch this back, you'll see you light up. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because that's all, you then suddenly want to become educated, and you realise So many things in life. If you think about, even go back to when I was younger and where you buy a car from and where you buy a car from now, it's not recognisable. And it's
Yeah.
the same sort of thing. The world changes, and if we can open our minds, there's so much to discover.
I agree, and the wine. One of the best things I like about the wine world is it is rabbit hole after rabbit hole of going down
Yeah.
pockets of information and discovery, and all you need to be is curious, and
Yeah.
you will find so
Be
many
a bit of
more,
Alice
so
in
much more
Wonderland, and you'll be fine.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Pop your orange wine hat on and jump down.
Right. I'll give you some feedback. Will, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure as well, mate. Thank you so much.